once, my ass.
I'm only 4. Bonjour, Monsieur Pussycat.
Cracking toast, Robert.
Start spreading the news.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the short podcast about short films. I'm your host, and we are discussing the Academy Award for Best Animated Short. Today's episode is about the 48th year of the award at the 52nd Academy Awards, which celebrates the films of 1979. Today's guest is one of our most frequent. You last heard her discussing Monroe and the nominees of 1960. Please welcome back our favorite short, Miss Zita Short. Hello, Zita.
Thank you. Oh, I love the pun. Thank you so much for doing that.
I've done it for every episode.
No, it never gets old. That's the thing. It's evergreen. The pleasure is, it seems new every time because it's just so perfect.
Well, we are just happy to have you, and I'm glad you like the joke every single time. Just before we get into everything, remind us, what is your familiarity with the Best Animated Short category?
So it's certainly limited, especially compared to those that are in my social circle, such as yourself and Christoph, who has appeared as a guest on a couple of episodes. However, you've been helping me to get into it, and I have been watching more of the classics recently.
That's really great to hear that this podcast is helping you broaden your horizons, so to speak.
Yes.
But yeah, and so I love having like just guests come back over and over again because they get to see with me just like the evolution of the category. So like you started out in the 1930s with the Disney shorts parts, and then I think you were on pretty much every decade. I think maybe not the 50s, but I know you're in the 40s. Got some Tom and Jerry in there, and then most recently Monroe is when we start to see more out there stuff like outside of the Hollywood. And it's just like, and now we get to this year, we don't have any Hollywood nominees here, I believe. Yeah, it's just a Canadian one, a British / Yugoslavian one. Oh wait, no, Paul Fierlinger. He's American. Oh, I'll get into what he is. He's a lot of things. But yes.
What he is. Oh my gosh. That sounds ominous. As though
it doesn't. I didn't mean it as ominous. It's just he's lived in a lot of places. But okay. We'll get to him when we get to him. I'm talking too much about the episode ahead of us, but I just mean that we are out of like the mainstream studio Hollywood era. We are into what is considerably a much weirder category now, and that is the kind of thing I love. I just enjoy this. I enjoy this category, especially at this time. But yeah, you want to just get into it, or do you have anything you like to say before we get in?
No, we can go ahead.
All right. So this year has only 3 nominees. Our first nominee and the year's winner is Every Child, directed by Eugene Fedorenko. This is the first and only nomination for producer Derek Lam, though he also produced last year's winner, Special Delivery, though for once the producer did not get nominated for that one, rather going to the 2 co-directors. I'm not sure why that happened, as the rules for consideration have not changed. In any case, let's talk about Derek Lam. This short is from the National Film Board of Canada, its 3rd consecutive win with 16 total nominations, and Derek Lam at this point had been with NFB for nearly 20 years. Lam got his start, as many NFB producers do, as a mere animator, contributing segments to films like Potpourri and Hors d'oeuvres, before getting the chance to direct a short of his own, I Know an Old Lady Who Swallowed a Fly, which became quite a hit for NFB. And as I read up on Derek Lam, he almost encompasses every single cliche that is common for nominees in this category. He got his start at NFB, check. He then goes on to teach at an Ivy League university, check. Harvard in his case. Then he goes to form his own animation studio, check. And makes shorts for PBS, check. Specifically for Sesame Street, check. After all that, he returns to NFB and becomes the head of the English language animation division in 1976, and coincidentally or not, the very next year is when the NFB starts winning Oscars. Lamb then left NFB again after only 6 years in 1982, and again formed his own production company with his wife Lamb Perlman Productions, making a handful of shorts, including sports cartoons, a series of 45 under 2 minute short films about animals playing sports that aired internationally, including on Nickelodeon. And unfortunately, there's not much else to say. Lamb eventually retired and passed away in 2005 at the age of 69. So let's return to his Oscar-winning short film. Every Child was made in collaboration with UNICEF, who quite often collaborate with filmmakers to honor and promote the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, which guarantees a few basic rights that should be afforded to all children worldwide. The declaration was adopted by the UN in 1959 and in 1989 was succeeded by the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which has been ratified by every single member of the United Nations, with the exception of the United States. Every Child is performed entirely a cappella by Le Mime Electrique, a Quebecois sound effects duo made up of Patrice Arber and Bernard Querez, as well as a baby. The three of them making all the sound effects in this film. The story starts with a businessman finding a baby on his doorstep. He's far too busy to take care of it, so he passes it on to an old couple next door. When their dog misses their attention, the baby is then passed on to another neighbor, with each one passing it on to yet another neighbor. Will no one take care of this baby? Zita, start us off. What did you think of Every Child?
So it inspired so many different thoughts. I've been in a weird Quebecois spiral recently. I've been watching a lot of Xavier Dolan films, and so this was very on brand. And I was just fascinated by it. It feels so 70s in so many ways, even though it comes at the turn of the decade. And I loved the fact that, again, it manages to be so humorous, even though it's dealing with this very dark, difficult subject, and the fact that it exists in such a surrealist landscape. And we were talking beforehand about the fact that one of these shots reminded me of a music video, and this was the one. Have you ever seen the music video for the MGMT song Kids?
No. I know the band that you're talking about. I know
Okay.
the song, but I haven't seen the
Yes.
video.
So the song that, the music that Leonardo DiCaprio listened to while having sex, it's that band. And the music video, it features a small child in a cot screaming while monsters try to attack him. And then we encounter his mother, who's very neglectful. She quite literally drops him on the street at one point. And then, as in this shot, the kid gets picked up by more nurturing figures. And so you could say that the link is tenuous, but something about the visual style, I have to imagine, they stole from. So that kept coming to mind for me. At the same time, yet another music video sort of reminded me of it. Have you seen the video for Tom Petty's Running Down a Dream?
I don't even know that song, although I do know who Tom Petty is.
Okay, so that's a music video that has a very surrealist aesthetic. So basically, what I'm trying to say is any music video that sort of reminds you of, how do you even pronounce his surname? Is it Escher?
Yeah, MC Escher.
MC Escher. Yes. Any piece of art that tries to evoke that sort of aesthetic is essentially what I was thinking of. And so I guess my overarching point in this very unstructured discussion is that I was fascinated by the fact that it managed to blend so many different styles and sensibilities successfully instead of seeming disjointed.
Hmm. Yeah. I definitely, even though like this film doesn't even like feature like Asherian architecture or anything like that, like what he's known for, it's like I definitely understand like where it's coming from. Like, uh, there's a lot of like like the quote unquote camera of the film like moves around the scene, and it's just like and so which is very hard for like an animator to really do, considering it's like you have to just redraw the whole image in just a slightly new angle. Well, and it's just like it keep rotating it. It's like it's very intensive, labor intensive process, but it's just like it really works for like the whole vibe of it, which is very slightly off-putting, but it works. It's like I just like the comedic scenarios that we see with this baby. It's just like with the I especially like the third house, I think it was, that the baby goes to, where it has this woman and who like finds the baby, and then her boyfriend comes home. She shoves the baby under the rug first off, and then the boyfriend and the woman, and they like communicate through like fake opera singing thing. It was just like it's I don't know why that gets me, but I thought it was very funny. It's just like, and it's like, and of course, like as I said earlier, it's like this is meant to be a film that's like about like, oh, we need to take care of our children. Children deserve better care by our society, the Declaration of the Rights of the Child, and all that. And it's just like, but this is just a good short film about a baby that nobody wants.
Yes, it is. It is. And yes, those little touches really do enhance it. The playing around with the soundscape is just delightful. And I liked the fact that the parents in particular, it's an animated shot. You're not expecting the deepest characterization in the world, but the fact that they're such abstract figures, I think really adds something to it.
Hmm. Yeah, and it it does very well like just quickly getting to the point of like each character that
Yes.
we like it's very he like film just moves along very quickly, of course, because it is a short film. It's only like 6 minutes long, which is even short for this category. But it's like so quickly you just completely understand like what each person is and like what their whole deal is, and you can kind of see like why they eventually won't accept the child and like just keep passing it on just so quickly. And it's just like that's just good character design. It's good animation, it's good direction. It's like it's something that can be like surprisingly hard to do, but it's just this film does it really well. It's just a really good short. And I also like the ending. It's like when the last house like just puts the baby in a cart and lets it roll down the hill. I really like the first, I like the two men in the garbage dump that the cart rolls into. I think they're probably my two favorite characters, just in terms of their design and the way they act. But also I like how it morphs into the two Foley artists and the baby. Yeah, it's just like I thought that was a really cute touch. I especially that book ending where it's like it starts out the live action footage of the two like sound artists, yes, and the baby, and then it just turns into the film itself. It's like that's something that they didn't really need to do, but it's like it's just a really nice touch to really, uh, it's a nice framing device, I'd say.
Mm. And I'm going to get very sort of overly honest and sentimental here
Go
and
ahead.
note that a lot of these sort of animated shorts restored my faith in art. I think it's very easy to sort of get down on yourself and to feel incredibly depressed whenever you read about the history of the American film industry and how Hollywood got to the point that it is currently at. And I think it just becomes so hard to believe that there's even a possibility that people will be allowed to make art on a considerable budget that isn't overly pressured to kowtow to commercial concessions. And a lot of these animated shorts really don't feel as though they had too many producers' notes to deal with. They do feel like an honest, emotional, creative expression. And that was just really inspiring to me as I read incredibly depressing books about the business side of the industry. And it just made me glad that something this odd in so many regards could even get nominated by the Academy, which is full of fuddy-duddies.
Oh yeah, this is it's so fun like seeing some of these short films and just imagining like an Academy member watching it, like the same Academy members that made like Driving Miss Daisy a Best Picture winner, or watching like some of these nominees, like especially the one we'll talk about next, and just like wondering like what do they think of it, and just like how did this get nominated? Although, if we're being honest, the people who made Driving Miss Daisy Best Picture winner aren't the ones that are probably like on the board for the animated shorts that would go and watch all those shorts and like genuinely interest and think about them. It's like which of these is the best one here. But in any case, it's just like on your point about like the inspiration that these shorts cause, like something I've been finding as each of these episodes, I look into whoever made the short and just try and find some biography about them, just say some facts about them. And it's just like there's just so many people who make these films. And it's just like and animation is maybe the hardest film medium that there is, just because there is just so much work that it takes to just even make a minute or two of animation. And just the people who are so devoted to make that either on their own or as part of like a company, a production studio. Oh, it's just like, and there's just so many of these people out there. There's so many shorts out there. It's just like so many people have found the ability to like sit down and make something. And that's always just so admirable.
It is, it really is. And it's just so pleasing to see something this strange in amongst all of the blandness that is present in the other categories, because it can be a real chore getting through even the Best Picture nominees. And these films, in addition to being nice and short, which is pleasant, are generally more fascinating. Even if I don't like them per se, there's definitely something to think about afterwards, which was not the response I had after sitting through The Subject Was Roses to see Patricia Neal and Jack Elbertson. This is weird. I'm going to remember that grandmother with her odd nose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why I'm doing this whole podcast. That's why I started it off with just going through uh the animated short category. It's just like this is probably the most, maybe not the most interesting, but actually yeah, it is the most interesting category, because there is just such, you don't get this kind of variety in any of the other categories. And I'm forever grateful that even when the studio animated short died, the Academy never thought about getting rid of this category or the other short film categories, because they bring such spice to all aspects of like the Academy Awards when it comes to the ceremony or like when it comes to predicting the category. It's just like it's just so, it's so nice to have these categories here, because it's just like, and one of my favorite parts about like the Academy Award ceremonies are when the short film winners get to like accept their award, because like unlike the other categories where these are like industry professionals, they've been doing this for such a long time. It's just like these are normal people. These are people who rarely ever get the chance to be on such a public stage, and then they get to speak to millions of people around the world for a few seconds as they are honored with this high award. and it's just like it's just beautiful. It's just like being kind of plucked out of obscurity for a brief moment. It's nice.
It is. It really is.
Mhm. Yeah, but back to Every Child.
Sorry, that was a
We're
real ooh
uh,
tangent.
tangents are great on this podcast. Every guest feels bad about when we go on tangents, but I always encourage it. I always let my guests just talk for as long as they want about whatever they want to, whatever comes to mind. Because it's always just nice to hear people talk about like what they're thinking about. It's just where does these films inspire you to go?
Hmm, certainly.
Mhm.
And one thing that I kept thinking about throughout this shot is that our mutual friend, Ronaldo Sosa, must love this because it features a bad mother, and we know that he adores women who are bad parents and would absolutely be supportive of everything that she does. So I guess I'm sort of sad that he didn't get to be on this episode, but I'm representing him. I'm his proxy.
I just want to say that Ronaldo gave this film 2.5 stars, and Christoph gave
Oh,
it 2.
okay. So there must have been something else here that he reacted against.
I I think it might be the soundtrack. Uh,
Maybe.
because I feel like that can be a bit off-putting because it's like these aren't the best sound imitators out there. They're not I think his name is Michael Winslow. He was in Police Academy and Spaceballs. One of the best vocal artists there is
Are
and it's
we
just
referencing Assignment Miami?
uh I
The thing I love about the Police Academy franchises and all sort of low effort comedy franchises is when they get to the fifth installment or so and just completely give up. And so you end up with something like Assignment Miami, where the concept is just the same as all of the other films, but in Miami.
I have never seen a single Police Academy movie. I just know that Michael Winslow, I think he's in all of them from what I've heard, or maybe at
Mm.
least most of them. But yeah, the point was it's just like uh these two sound artists, they're good, but it's also I believe it could be a bit distracting, especially considering that there is no music or anything outside of, the if they decide to make music sounds. Like at one point, one of the guys is like mimicking a violin because one of the characters is playing a violin, and it's just like I understand how that can be a bit off-putting to listen to watch this film with it, but I think it worked for me. I enjoyed it, but I can definitely understand how other people might not be so positive about it. So sorry to Le Mime Electric, but you're not for everyone.
Hmm. Yes, I think there's a limited market for Quebecois electronic sounds. So, they just didn't vibe with it, and that's okay. I
Okay.
enjoyed it very much. So, oh well.
So you're better than them.
Well, we might come to blows. That's what I'm saying.
You should, like, after this episode's recorded, you should DM Christopher Ronaldo and yell at them like, why don't you like this? Change your opinion now.
Yes, you have to revise your opinion. How dare you?
uh yeah, I also just want to say Le Mime Electric, uh I just could not find much of anything about them. It's just like when I Googled like their name, it's which I thought would be a very like unique name, and so it would just draw up like every single thing there is about them. I couldn't find much about them. It's just, I guess they were this kind of comedy duo that just made noises. And it's just like I found like a small clip of them on some sketch show or something where it's just like, oh, they're like driving a bus and like they make the sounds of like the different writers like popping the coin in and things like that. and that's the whole clip. That's all I could find. And it's just like, I feel like there should be more about them. If they were popular enough to be in this NFB short, to have their name, Le Mime Electric, in the credits, it's just like I would have thought there'd be more about them, but I could barely find their names, Patrice Arbor and Bernard Carras. But you know, I guess Quebecois people are just more unknown.
It reminds me of that tweet. Denis Villeneuve becomes the first openly French Canadian to, I think it was something like direct to Blockbuster. And anyway, I really do appreciate Oscar nominees who don't have much written about them on the internet, who just vanished into the ether afterwards. And in this case, they didn't even get nominated. They just played a part in making the film. But it does remind me of, say, Jocelyn Lagarde or something, where you think,
Yeah.
wow, what happened? Because I, being the careerist that I am, being an opportunist, would try to spin that out into something, would attempt to keep going. And maybe Le Mime Electrique did, but I am fascinated by these people who sink back into obscurity after briefly receiving media exposure.
Yeah, and that kind of thing like does happen with the actual nominees sometimes. Like I can't remember what film it was, but there was one nominee where I couldn't find a single thing about them, including like their gender. Like I didn't know if they were a man or a woman or anything in between. It was just like I I couldn't even find that much about them. It's like I knew their name, I knew a couple films they worked on, and that was it. It's just and their name was gender neutral also, so which didn't help. I think I did assume in the episode that they were a man because it's like one more sources did use he him pronouns, and also considering the track record for this category, it is much more likely that they are going to be a man. But that's enough about that.
Yeah. And I guess other aspects of the animation that are interesting, and something that I kind of enjoy about these shots that are sort of Buñuelian in a way, or Chabrolian, where they're definitely taking aim at the middle class bourgeois lifestyle, as so many films do. And while I agree with that viewpoint in several regards, sometimes I find it a little bit tiresome when a film seems really proud of itself for pointing out that, oh, well, middle class people, they're emotionally disaffected and they live in massive houses, but they just can't connect with one another. I think at some point those have become sort of art house cliches in a way. Whereas in this shot, I think the social commentary is so obvious that it becomes more entertaining. You have these people inhabiting this house that sort of, you could say the spatial geography is, well, this descriptor does not even make sense in this context, but cartoonish, it's exaggerated. So, and that was really something that tickled me. And of course, you have all of those other comedic elements, like these people whose bodies have ridiculous proportions. And I just think it's so sort of beautifully put together that it does end up seeming more pointed in its critiques than something like Triangle of Sadness.
I didn't expect Triangle of Sadness to come up in this episode. Uh, but yeah, it's just like while the message of it is very, very blunt, it's just like, wow, we need to take care of our children. I think first, the fact that this thing was commissioned by UNICEF does give it a pass, let's say, for its blatant messaging. It's like, yeah, of course, this is going to have like a very obvious message about protecting the children and all that. And also, the film, like, when you're watching it, it's like you aren't even really focusing on the message of it. You aren't, it's more just about how funny this thing is. It is just a very comedic short film. And it's just like, and that's how you should do like these kind of message things, at least if you're trying to be funny with them, which more people should try to be funny. It's just like emphasize the humor, and so just let this message sneak in underneath that. And it's just like, because the message won't detract from the humor, but the humor might detract from the message, or maybe my point is vice versa. I don't even know anymore. um
No, I
I
get
don't know what
what
I'm saying.
this is very, you are the manny father of this generation. You believe in termite art, and you believe that films should not simply serve as receptacles for messages. And I agree with that statement. I think I brought this to the table. I'm very much sounding like some sort of film studies professor when I say that. But I guess my point was that, yes, it's very funny. And I do like the fact that the message is conveyed in such an unsubtle manner that it almost spins back around and becomes subtle because you can clock it so easily. It's not a distraction. Whereas I think films that seem more self-amused and prouder of the manner in which they have delivered this message to you, that can become a bit irritating. This one seems very relaxed about the whole thing, and I liked that.
Mhm. So I had no idea what you were talking about when you said termite art, and so I quickly Googled that, and I didn't know who Manny Farber was, to the point where I thought you said you are Money Father, which I had no idea what that meant. But like looking it up, I'm getting what your point was. And also, he was born in Arizona, and so that's nice.
Oh, the spiritual home of this podcast.
Maybe so. Uh, but yeah, we love going on tangents in this
We
podcast.
do. Yes.
And us two especially, both on your podcast and on mine.
Right. Yes.
Uh, is there anything else you'd like to say about this short film?
I imagine that I will be having nightmares related to this. This has been happening to me recently. I've been taking melatonin tablets, and because I watch a lot of movies, my dreams generally seem to be based off of them. And now, because of the melatonin, the dreams are a lot more vivid and I actually remember them. So it's been sort of interesting. I think as an experiment, I should watch a movie that I actually like and then get to have the experience of sort of living in it. But yeah, I'm definitely going to be fantasizing about ending up in a trash heap filled with a bunch of doors and bathtubs tonight.
Well, it sounds like a pleasant dream. Uh,
Yes.
But yeah, let's move on to our second nominee, which is Dream Doll, directed by Bob Godfrey and Zlato Grgic. This marks the third nomination for Godfrey following his previous win for Great, and the first and only nomination for Grgic. However, he is representative of Zagreb Film here, garnering its fourth and final nomination in this category. And while he was not nominated, this film was also produced by John Hallis of Hallis and Bachelor. Uh, and this film is perhaps one of the great steps toward the end of the Cold War, seeing as the East and the West come together like this. And in kind, I, Westerner, will talk mainly about Zlatko Grgic. He was born in Zagreb, Yugoslavia. Grgic, of course, got his start in animation at Zagreb Film in the 1950s, first as an animator, then working up to director. He had a few notable films, including the musical Pig, which competed at the Cannes Film Festival, and Scabies, which garnered international attention, including from the NFB, which hired him to direct a few short films for them. It is after his time at NFB that we get to Dream Doll, which is his final film. And I can't find much about how this collaboration came to be, but it appears that Godfrey and Gergich just had a lot in common and set about making something together. And isn't that just the beauty of art? But I digress. Dream Doll is about a man purchasing a blow-up sex doll, which then begins to follow him around. At first, he runs from it, but eventually accepts its company in spite of the world around him judging their relationship. So, from that description, you might not expect that the first adjective I used to describe it to be beautiful, but I just really love this story. And it is the way this story moves. It's like, of course, it starts out funny because, of course, the idea just purchasing a sex doll, that's just instantly hilarious, especially if you're Bob Godfrey, who is just horny, so horny in all of his films. But then it moves on to something a bit more romantic, I guess, as the main guy. He starts to accept the company of the doll, and they hang out together, even though he gets fired from his job for having the sex doll at work, and then like he gets beaten by a random woman in the park. Okay, when she gets the cop to go like arrest him or something, she then beats the cop too when she can't find the guy. Right. And then after that, it becomes a bit tragic. I'm going to spoil just the whole thing here. It becomes tragic when this group of rowdy teens, I guess, so ruffians, they steal the sex doll and it pops. And then at the end, it's beautiful because it's just like I was absolutely awe-inspired by this ending where it's going to sound crazy as I talk about it, but it's just like every sex doll in the city just flies through the sky to the man as he cradles like the little balloon who what remains of his lost love or whatever. And then as they fly down to him, it's just like I read it as like he was the only person who showed any love towards these inanimate objects rather than just using them. And then it's just like, and then as thanks, as their gift to him, he gets to ride up with them into heaven or something and ride off into the sunset, float through the sky. Like it's just it ends with a shot that is deliberately meant to be similar to one from Peter Pan of like the children flying across London, but instead of, Peter Pan and his friends, it's a man and a million sex dolls just flying off into the sunset. So yeah, I really love this one. And I just want to mention also that on my first watch of this, I just thought it was kind of okay, but now it's one of my favorite nominees in this category because, oh my God, this one was really good.
Yes, and I'm going to come in here, and you've been so insightful and articulate in describing what you love about it. And I sound like a complete Philistine when I say this. I should know the technical term for it, but I do love this style of animation where it looks as though everything is sort of half finished in a way. You have this watercolor technique, but I like the fact that the sort of world that this character inhabits does feel limitless and boundless in a way, and it looks toxic and terrifying in so many regards. But just the fact that his bedroom doesn't appear to be sort of clearly defined in terms of, I keep saying this, spatial geography was really appealing to me. And there's something sort of whimsical about this, in spite of the fact that it is about a subject that would be considered inappropriate to some. You could not show this in a classroom, I assume, with the sex dolls' breasts on display. But it's not, say, a Ralph Bakshi film where there's a whole lot of ejaculate on display, and it's not that graphic for as much as it is willing to go there. And there was something to me that was sort of curiously moving about it, as you point out. By its end, it does come to this place where it really does shatter you on an emotional level. And you certainly do not expect that to happen during the first 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, it's just really astounding. And I think the term you were looking for earlier is a limited animation. And just like, and one thing I wanted to talk about with this is how it it kind of merges the styles of its two directors, or like the two branches of animation they come from. Because like Bob Godfrey, it's like first he kind of provides the basic story, because only Bob Godfrey would make a concept as horny as this. Yeah, so it's just like where it's the red balloon, except it's a sex doll. um and it's just like, but Zato Gergic, and he provides the more general like Eastern European style of like animations. Like he's what makes this film kind of told entirely without dialogue, whereas Bob Godfrey's more chatty in his films, let's say. Um and I think that the Eastern European influence is what gives it like uh that kind of just overly emotional kind of climax to it, pun intended. Uh and I don't even know what I'm really saying here. I just keep like trying to find the words, but it's just like it does truly feel like a mix of like the Eastern and Western styles of animation coming together in this one film. And it just really, really works.
Yeah, I agree. It's a fascinating blend. And sorry, tangent alert here,
Go ahead.
but are you aware of the Bluebird?
Uh like the story, like I know the
I'm
Shirley
talking
Temple
about
movie.
the 1976 Jane Fonda, Elizabeth Taylor extravaganza.
Don't know that one. Never heard of it. It
Okay.
sounds interesting though.
American Soviet co-production directed by George Cukor, based on the classic story, but I believe it was notable as one of the few cinematic co-productions between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. I find it so funny just because there was a lot of reporting on the antics of the actresses when they visited Russia during this period. Oh my goodness. Ava Gardner and Cicely Tyson are also in this movie. I did not know. But apparently, Jane Fonda would force local Soviets to go for morning runs with her and was eventually reprimanded for this by a local government official. Wow. To be on that set, to be honest, just to be near the two of them, to see how they interacted would be so much fun. Apparently, oh wow. Marlon Brando was supposed to be cast in a role, but eventually dropped out. And Katharine Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine were considered for the Elizabeth Taylor and Jane Fonda roles.
I see where you are on the Wikipedia page. Meanwhile, I'm down at the point where Tyson and was accused of trying to jinx the production by casting voodoo spells on set.
What?
Accused by
Okay.
George Cukor, by the way.
Oh my God. Okay. Wow.
What is this movie? I need to watch it ASAP.
Hmm.
Oh my God.
Okay, sorry. One last note. Elizabeth Taylor spent $8,000 buying additional costumes for her roles. Of course.
Of course she would. Uh, but yeah, going back to Dream Doll. What did this have to do with Dream Doll? I forget. Oh,
Sorry,
because it was a co-production.
that was an unsuccessful American-Soviet co-production. This is a more creatively ambitious production, you could say, with less discordant elements.
And it sounds like it ended up being better too, considering that like the reviews on this, the critical reception section is mostly negative. Um, but yes, um, I thought I had more to say about Dream Doll, and there should be more to say about Dream Doll because it's a very different movie. But my mind's coming to a blank right now.
Hmm. Yes, so sorry, this is certainly a very different film in terms of its form and content, but I think that you're right in saying that it has a clear Eastern European influence. And I just wondered, which films do you think it drew on for inspiration? Do you think that this is sort of a Polanski-ish movie? Is it sort of a Milos Forman style sex comedy? Is it, I can't even pronounce his name, Andrei Vajda? Which director from Eastern Europe do you think sort of exerts the most obvious artistic influence over this product?
Well, I don't really think that they do draw from like those live action directors, whereas because it's like from what I've read about Zagreb film as a whole and just Eastern European animation as a whole, it's just like the main influences that I see come up in the films is that of like UPA and John Hubley and their whole like that is what really got their whole creative style started. And it's just like they have uh they have a tendency, or at least yeah, a tendency, I guess, as to like not overly moralize their films also. It's like they try to use subtext on like in specific contrast to like Disney productions, which they are not a fan of. And it's just like and yeah, I believe that you could say that Dream Doll itself is quite opposite of like whatever Disney was producing at this time. Like it's no Fox and the Hound or anything of that nature. Um, but yeah, it's just like they overall, I would say that it's like they're kind of just pretty insular, I'd say. Well, I guess Zlato Gergic, he kind of uh got past the Iron Curtain, let's say. It's like he went on to work for NFB. So I don't think there is much specific influence outside of like the obvious like Red Balloon connection. It seems to be kind of a parody of the Red Balloon. But outside of that, I think it's just an idea that Godfrey and Gergich had and just wanted to bring it to life. And they did beautifully.
Hmm. Well, you've certainly filled me in there. And one other question that I have. So, the National Film Board of Canada seems to be a big force around this time. Do they remain sort of dominant in this category, or has their influence waned over the years?
They were like this is probably the peak of their dominance, especially since like this is their third year in a row that they have won this category. I think they only ever get 5 wins in total, if I remember correctly. And it's like they end up just kind of like a constant presence in the category from like the 1960s to up to today, even. I think there's a few nominees in recent years that they have had. It's just that uh when this category was running low on nominations at this time, it's like NFB was one of the few studios that was consistently putting out theatrical animated shorts that could end up nominated. And considering that these are like publicly funded kind of things, they do tend to be more family friendly, which the Academy is very receptive towards. And so it's just kind of like this perfect storm that let the NFB get all these nominations. And they are, if I remember correctly, they are the most nominated studio in this category behind maybe only Disney. And they are out of any studio, they are the most nominated international non-American studio in this category in any or out of any studio in Oscars history, they are the most nominated because not only do they make these animated shorts, they also make many documentaries and documentary shorts. And from what I know of that category, they do kind of get a lot of nominations there as well. So they'll just through kind of like grinding out these two categories, they end up to become one of the most prominent players from outside of Hollywood in Academy Awards history, which is kind of funny to think about. That was kind of rambly, but I hope I answered your question.
No. That was a great detailed answer, and it intrigues me because I've always sort of wondered, sorry, other tangent, why the Canadian film industry isn't bigger than it is. It sounds like they're a major force in animation, but they contribute so much talent to the Hollywood film industry, and yet their sort of homegrown product doesn't tend to do all that well, with the exception of Sarah Polly or Atta McGoyan. And so, yeah, I just sort of don't get it. Do you have any theories that would help to explain why they're not doing as well as they probably should be, why they haven't reached their full potential?
I guess maybe it's just they kind of get dwarfed by Hollywood, and just you have much more opportunities for success in Hollywood. And so it's just like I imagine there is just a lot of collaboration between the US, the Hollywood, and like Canada's film production. So it's like they like famously, like so many films are shot in like Vancouver and stuff like that. So I imagine it's just it's while there is like a kind of insular Canadian film industry, I imagine there is just a lot of co-production, and just like the two sides kind of work together at times. That's my guess anyway.
No, that makes sense. And while it's a massive country in terms of its size, it does have a significantly smaller population and economy. So I assume that explains why they don't have quite as much funding or infrastructure to produce films.
Yeah, and it's not like there's no Canadian movies. Like they make plenty. It's just that it's rare for them to get much success like outside of Canada. And it's just like kind of the same way you could talk about like like French movies or things like that. It's just like they certainly make their own movies, but it's just like it's hard for them to get much reception outside of their home country. So I
I
guess
guess even the French industry, I would contend, is much bigger than the Canadian industry. They have domestic movie stars and everything. Where are there actors who are famous solely because of their work in Canadian? Maybe there are. I just haven't.
we just aren't Canadian, so we don't know.
Yes, who knows?
Yeah, and I guess maybe France is a bad example considering like that does have like a significantly larger film industry than most European countries, especially considering the fact that that is where film was born. But but yeah, it's I guess maybe a better comparison would be something like Germany or like Austria or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I got it. Sorry, that's a great explanation for why things are the way they are. And sorry, getting back to the short,
Dream Doll. Yes, we were talking about that a little bit ago.
yes, a lot of fun. It's so entertaining to see or just to live inside of this world. It's a fantastic exercise in creating a world that is not believable, obviously, in the conventional sense, and yet it does have its own internal logic that you can follow. And so I was fascinated when, for example, the bodies of the sex dolls start floating through the sky. in an odd sense, it did feel like an extension of what we had already seen instead of coming out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like we already see like one of them like having a mind of its own, flying through the sky, following this one guy, and so maybe so it follows that perhaps all of them are capable of doing that, and they just choose not to. They were waiting for this one moment to find their champion and then take him to the big great sex shop in the sky. I
Yeah.
wonder what kind of like metaphorical readings there are for this.
Hmm.
What is some underlying like themes or like interpretations of this? It's like one of the production companies, Hollis and Batchelor, also made Animal Farm, or the 1950s movie. And so it's just like that is famously based on
The CIA plants.
yes.
This is what no, they're government shills. They literally made secret propaganda in Britain. Oh my god.
But yeah, so perhaps this had like that was secretly about like the Russian Revolution. Maybe this is secretly about something else. I don't know.
Sorry, another tangent. Reading off on the production of Animal Farm is honestly terrifying. They did not warn George Orwell's widow that they were employees of the CIA and she signed away the rights. It's so dodgy what they did. It's so messed up. Anyway, maybe this was yet another CIA product, and who knows what they were trying to do here? Maybe they were trying to increase the birth rate. I'm not sure. Maybe they were trying to dissuade
Maybe this
people
was also
from.
produced by UNICEF. It's about the rights of the child. The,
Okay.
the United Nations Declaration for the Rights of the Sex Doll. Oh my god, why is that so funny? God. Okay. We gotta retain composure here.
Yes.
Uh, any final thoughts on Dream Doll or anything about it? Any final tangents you want to go on?
I thought it was fantastic, and it's one of those ones that I would say isn't well known to people who don't obsessively follow this category, and it deserves to be seen by more people.
Hmm. And I think I mentioned earlier, it's like I used to not really love this, but now it's one of my favorites. And it's like the exact opposite happened for Bob Godfrey's last nominee, Great, where it's like that used to be one of my favorite categories or favorite nominees in the category, and now it's just okay. Hey, and so it's just like I was just obsessing over the wrong Bob Godfrey movie before, or maybe there's always just one Bob Godfrey champion, and so if one falls, another must rise to take its place. And so maybe next time, if I decide to go through this category again, maybe I'll think less fondly of Dream Doll and maybe think more fondly on Kama Sutra Rides Again or something like that. We'll see.
Yes. And I like the fact that you have such deep attachments to directors who might not be well known to people outside of your very specific circle.
Well, the thing is, it's like Bob Godfrey himself is like a very notable animation director. Like he and Richard Williams are like the two like big British animators.
Ah.
And so it's just like yeah, they have they have lots of acclaim. It's just maybe they are not known much outside of animation circles, but in animation circles they are very big names. Anyway,
Okay. Hmm.
I that felt bad. I felt like I was mansplaining, but sorry. Uh, I'll just move on to our third and final nominee, which is It's So Nice to Have a Wolf Around the House, directed by Paul Feierlinger. And side note, I noticed today that this is the 200th short film we've covered on this podcast. So congratulations for the milestone. I'm sure we'll cover 200 more. But yeah, this is the first and only nomination for Feierlinger, and his life is one I can only describe as international. He was born in Japan, the son of Czechoslovakian immigrants, moving to the United States during World War II, and was in school with other immigrants, including Milos Forman. But eventually, his family moved back to Czechoslovakia, where he graduated from art school, doing freelance work as an illustrator and cartoonist, and eventually garnering enough clout to form his own independent animation studio without state backing or oversight. He made his career selling shorts to local television stations, ranging from short ad bumpers to full short films. After a decade, he left Czechoslovakia and found himself jumping all across Europe, taking whatever animation jobs he could get, eventually moving to the United States, and in 1971 forming AR&T and another animation studio. Of course, being an animator in the 70s in the US, he made money by making commercials and animated segments for Sesame Street. From this point on, Feierlinger was a full-time animator and director. His commercials had their own nomination, or had his own claim, but we care about his personal projects. Of course, there's the film that got the Oscar nomination for, but why stop there when we could also mention And Then I'll Stop, Does Any of This Sound Familiar? Which has Feierlinger interviewing drug addicts and ends with Paul talking about his own struggles with abuse. There's the films commissioned by PBS. First, the autobiography, autobiography, Drawn from Memory, and then Still Life with Animated Dogs, about his dogs, that the latter of which won a Peabody Award. Then there's his two feature films, My Dog Tulip and Slocum at Sea with Himself, both co-directed with his second wife, Sarah. It's a very accomplished career, and what's more, Paul is still with us, having turned 87 this past March. But we're here to talk about the film he made when he was only 43. Based on the book by Harry Allard, It's So Nice to Have a Wolf Around the House is about a man, his dog, his cat, and his fish, all of whom range from old to very, very, very old. They live together but are just so old that they can't take care of themselves, so they put out an advertisement for a companion and caregiver. In comes Cuthbert Q. Devine, a wolf who poses as a German shepherd. He was in Switzerland during the war and takes up the position. Over time, the old man, dog, cat, and fish all start to feel better, but what will happen when they find out the truth about the wolf and dog's clothing? Zita, what did you think of our final film?
So the first thing that came to mind for me, and this might not have even been the intention of the short, but for some reason it caused me to sort of romanticize a life lived in a really rainy, kind of rundown section of an urban environment. And I'm 90% certain there's the point of the short was that it's actually miserable to live in a house that's really disorderly, and that I guess you could say sort of a careerist life is depressing and meaningless. For some reason, I was vibing with it. And I really liked the animation at the beginning, just sort of giving you glimpses of the city instead of fully immersing you in it. And I think it's a point that you've made a lot. The directors of these shorts are very good at economical storytelling. They're very good at showing instead of telling. And because they have to be so suggestive at so many points, they really give you the room to fill in the gaps and to project your own thoughts and fantasies onto what's already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very well made short. I'll just start off with that. It is a good short. It's well made, well animated. Paul Feierlinger knows what he's doing. And it's a very cute story here that we've got about this, these four old creatures living on a houseboat together, and it's just then a wolf comes in to help take care of him. But he's actually a criminal or something. It's just like he was in a gang or something. It feels very loose as to like what kind of crimes he's doing. And it's just like I it's weird, but I liked it. Yeah, I just don't have much to say about this one. It's just a good short.
Okay, I really appreciated the use of the color palette. You have a lot of pastels in there, a lot of grays. It's very murky. As with the previous shot that we've discussed, there's a certain sulfuric quality to the color palette, and it really suffuses everything. And so when you do get a brief flash of color, it really makes an impact. And I liked the fact that there was so much use of essentially color theory on display, even though I know there are people who say that's nonsense. But I do think it was a great way to tell the story. And I liked the fact that it wasn't too obvious.
Hmm. Yeah, like color theory does play an important part in a lot of animated shorts. It's just like I remember that like uh UPA and like their limited animation style was taken from like this book about like the art of design or something like that. And it's like they took a lot of the stuff that you learned from that book into making their whole style. Oh, and I disagree with the idea that like color theory is bullshit because it's like colors mean so much. And it's just like, of course, there's going to be like these subconscious associations that we have with the different colors and all that. And it's important to be mindful of that kind of stuff.
Yes, yes, I think that's a fair point. And on the whole, I do think the craft here really stands out. I think listeners will probably notice that we are focusing less on the content of the story in
Yeah,
this
but
case.
yeah, go ahead. I was just agreeing. It's just like, yeah, we're not really talking about the plot here. It's very complicated, is the thing.
It is,
There's a
yes.
lot that happens in these 12 minutes.
Mm. But I think it's fair to say that, at least for me, the formal elements stood out more. And I kept thinking of, sorry, this whole episode has just been me making references to other things. But did you ever read one of the Geronimo Stilton books when you were young?
Who the fuck is Geronimo Stilton?
You haven't been reading Italian children's ch- chapter books.
I haven't even read Pinocchio.
Okay. Well, for some reason, English translations of these Italian children's novels were in the library when I was a child. And the protagonist is, they live in a world full of rats and mice. And the
Oh
way the
wait,
world,
wait. I
yeah,
looked it up and I recognize these books. I recognize this fucking
yes,
mouse guy. Uh
yes.
I never read them, but I do recognize these characters at least. I remember seeing these book covers.
Yes, so they're all obsessed with cheese, of course. And the animation style or the illustration style that she employs for the cityscapes in those books reminded me of what we see in this shot. So I wonder if Elisabetta Dami watched this shot once and decided that's it. That's what I want. So, and hey, she was only 21 when this was released. So there's a chance, I think.
Maybe. Hey, and like this is based on like a children's book, an illustrated children's book. I'm not sure how much the short takes from the illustrations of the original book. I tried looking for pictures earlier, but I couldn't find anything of like the inside of the book. But the cover does have like the wolf, and the wolf does look different. So I don't think it takes too much, but who knows?
Hmm. Yes. And I also, sorry, another esoteric reference. I was kind of getting Theo Angelopoulos vibes from the first shot. Do you agree?
Wait, hey, from oh, you're going back to Every Child? Um,
No, it's so nice to have a wolf around the
oh,
house.
I thought you said you're like in the first short. It was just like, oh,
No, no, the first shot of this shot, which features a cityscape and it's raining and it's very smoggy, I would say. So,
I'm gonna quickly like go back to the short film and look up like look
okay,
at the first shot because you're talking a lot about it and I don't remember it.
okay.
So uh give me a second. Um but yeah, why does it remind you of Theo and Globus? I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know.
Okay. So if you've ever watched The Traveling Players, much of that film consists of a theatre troupe very slowly walking through a series of small towns. And most of the small towns that they wander through look vaguely like this and seem to be off in the distance. And there's the same, I would almost call it a spooky atmosphere. And I guess I like it. I guess I'd like to live in a Theo Angelopoulos movie. And so this was very appealing to me.
Okay, so I have opened up the film now and I'm looking at this like first shot where you have like the city and then the dock with the houseboats. And it's just like I do get where you're coming from because like his films are often like very foggy. And it's like I do get that with this one. Although it's like I can't really think of him like doing many like city films set in cities. Like his films are more often like rural kind of. And so it's just like
The Weeping Meadow.
I haven't seen that one. I've seen like 4 or 5, I think, but not that one. Um, but yeah, uh, it is reminding me of something. It is like I don't think it's that, but it's just like this kind of very foggy port, or it is like reminding me of something, but I don't know what it like what's clicking in my brain right now. But uh there was something else. Oh, I also wanted to say just there's another nominee in this category. It's called The Family That Dwelt Apart. Uh, I want you to watch that one like after we record because I think you'd like it. It's got when you're talking about like how distant it all seemed, it's like I feel like that one has a similar kind of thing that I think you'd appreciate because it's about this family that like lives on an island by themselves and the I think it's like in Chesapeake Bay or something like that. But it's like they're just on an island by himself, and then it's like the mainlanders just have themselves convinced that something's wrong, and they need to go and save them. And it's a fun, darkly comic short, and I think you'll appreciate it. I'll send you the link to it soon.
Okay, well, I trust you. I trust your taste. So I'm fairly certain that I will enjoy it.
And Christoph really loves it, if I remember correctly. So if that's another recommendation.
Yes, but Christoph, he's so classy.
Oh,
But
and I guess he didn't like every child, so who cares
I
what he
know,
thinks?
God, so am I smart enough to get on board with it? We'll see.
Mhm. We'll see.
Hmm.
If it's any consolation, the the film is based on a I think it's short story, and it's written by E.B. White of Charlotte's Web fame. So I think if you think it should be simple enough for even us to understand, like let alone Christoph.
Yes, I hope so. Maybe I am on sort of intellectual par with a judge. We'll see whether I can get there.
Also, speaking of Christoph, his review of this short says, "So relatable. I often forget I live in a houseboat too," which is a direct, which is a reference to like a joke in the movie. But it's like I'm not sure if he's just referencing the joke or if he genuinely does live in a houseboat, which is kind of shocking to me.
Okay,
He's not a houseboat type. He's not Cary Grant and Sophia Loren to me.
right. Oh, wait. No, this really develops the Christoph mythology, though, because you know about the behind the scenes drama on the set of Houseboat. So I guess in that alternate universe, Christoph had a boyfriend that he cheated on with someone else and then kicked the current boyfriend off of the houseboat. And then his current boyfriend broke up with him when they started living together, but they still chose to live together for some reason.
It's so nice to have a Kristoff around the house.
Yes. Anyway, sorry for all that, but
I wonder what Kristoff's just gonna make of this episode. And I also recently, it's like a lot of these episodes have just been shouting out Kristoff and Ronaldo and Owen. It started with one of my previous guests, a friend of mine, wanting to know like who the regular listeners of this podcast were, and so I told her and she shouted them out. And it's just like ever since then, it's just like I feel like it keeps coming up. I keep bringing up like Kristoff or Ronaldo or something. And it's just like I wonder what they think of just being constantly mentioned. And just like we know you're out there. We know you're listening to this right now.
yes, and I'm sure there are a few eagle-eared listeners who will have picked up on my very in-depth esoteric houseboat reference and will be laughing about the Sophia Loren of it all. So
well,
good luck to you.
Of the many esoteric references you've been making today, especially considering the people who would be listening to this podcast, I think houseboat is one of the less esoteric ones. I think that's one of the ones that more people will understand as opposed to the Bluebird for 1970 whatever.
Yes, they'll know all about the Betsy Drake divorce. So that's fun.
All
But
right.
sure, I do find it really funny imagining, say, Owen listening to one of the more recent episodes and thinking, wow, like, what's her name? Nene Leakes. Why am I in this?
Or like Alexia Demi in Euphoria. Is this fucking podcast about us?
Yes. Yes.
God.
Hmm.
We this is all every time we record together, things just get off the rails completely. We just devolve into a mess of a disjointed laughter and chuckling.
Hmm. Yes, yes. I imagine if you're a listener who wants a tightly regimented, highly structured podcast episode, this will have disappointed you. However, if you do happen to be in our immediate circle, you will have been able to predict that things would end up this way.
Mhm. And yeah, it's like if you want a tightly regimented episode that just goes quickly from one film to the next, listen to one of the Kristoff episodes. Those are great. But if you and you've been on this podcast enough times that the people who listen to this know what we're going to get with a Zita episode, so they know what to expect and they will listen accordingly.
Yes, and you are a fantastic host, so I can see why people are hungry for more episodes.
Not many people are that hungry. Like
Jackie, for someone who's creating a podcast about a relatively niche subject, I really do admire how you have managed to really expand the scope of the project and find a larger target audience than one would typically expect for a subject like this.
well, thank you. But it's also like this does not have that large of an audience. Like, see, I'm looking at the analytics now. Like, there's not even a season 5 episode, like the current season we're on, that has more than like 3 or 4 listens. So
However, diverse audience. I think there are a few Arizonian podcasters who could claim to have regular listeners from Ireland and Germany and New Zealand.
thank you. And the Dominican Republic. Well, don't forget
Yes.
Ronaldo there.
So really, you're all over the map.
It's an international podcast.
It is.
It has fans all around the world, from sea to shining sea. I guess that's an American specific phrase. I don't know what's a more worldwide idiom. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Uh, but yeah. Any final thoughts on It's So Nice to Have a Wolf Around the House? Any jokes that strike your fancy?
I'm not, I think we kind of went through everything, but it was very enjoyable, I would say. And I want to live in a Theo Angelopoulos movie, so I need to make that happen.
Yeah, you need to watch one of his movies and then take some melatonin, pass out, and then you live in the movie.
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah. So now that we've gone through and talked about the three nominees, we are going to rank them all. Zita, start us off with your number three.
So at number three, and this proved to be surprisingly difficult to settle on, but I had It's So Nice to Have a Wolf Around the House. Beautifully made, but it didn't stay in my mind. It didn't provoke as many questions as the other two.
For me, my number three is it might be surprising to hear, but mine is Every Child. Oh,
Ooh.
I liked all three of these shorts, but in the end, it's just like I thought this one was kind of less entertaining, I guess. As it is an entertaining short, but I just didn't enjoy it or have as much fun as I did with the other two. Number two.
Well, number two for me was Every Child. I really liked it. I'll admit that I watched it about 3 times before we got to recording. I think it's a lot of fun. It just doesn't quite have the same level of ambition as the eventual winner in my eyes.
You watched it 3 times?
Yeah, I
I,
did my research.
I haven't even watched it 3 times. This was my second time watching it ever, and you watched it like 3 times in the past 2 days.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, my number two is It's So Nice to Have a Wolf Around the House, which, like Every Child, it's a solid short film. I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed it more than Every Child, but less than the number one pick, which we agree on, which is nice to. Have we agreed on all of these? I forget. I can't remember any major agreements in our or disagreements in our previous episodes.
Hmm. No, I don't think there's been too much friction so far.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, our joint number one is Dream Doll, the most beautiful short film about a sex doll, and also the first of two in this category.
Yes. Yes. It's an interesting one. I will admit that unlike you, I didn't quite pick up on all of the Peter Pan references, but it was great fun. It was so ambitious. I was sort of blown away by how much it attempts to achieve. And it reminded me of A Cameraman's Revenge, which is the best thing that a short film could do.
Nice. I just want to say I didn't personally like pick up on the Peter Pan reference. It was in like the Wikipedia article about the short film that it was just like the ending is an intentional reference to Peter Pan. And it's like, oh, that's funny. That a short film is talking about Peter Pan, or a short film about a sex doll is referencing Peter Pan here. But yeah, there's a lot of like Disney has had a wide influence on this category, both like inspiring short films and also inspiring people to do the exact opposite of whatever Disney was doing. It's like they're very maybe controversial, I guess would be the word figure in terms of animation. To this day, it's just like people love and hate Disney animation, especially amongst animators. They controversial.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I like thinking about being sort of a bad boy of animation or a bad boy of any field that seems quite staid and nerdy in a way. Just imagining people saying, oh, he's an enfant terrible about someone who animates short films. It's quite entertaining.
Yeah, that kind of things happen. It's like John Hubley was like he was kicked out of Hollywood with the Red Scare. Like he was tried, or maybe not tried isn't the right word, but he appeared in front of the House Un-American Activities Committee, was kicked out of UPA, and he formed his own independent animation studio. Oh, and it's just like he didn't put his name on in the name of his studio because of people would still associate him with communism or whatever. But then, like when he was making his own stuff, people started really appreciating it, and he eventually became one of the most influential figures in animation, and like not just in American animation, but animation worldwide. Right, and so he was like one of the bad boys of the era in his time, but now he's incredibly celebrated. Just an example. I love talking about the Hubleys.
Hmm. No, it is it's interesting to get a sense of this very vibrant milieu from someone like yourself who has really studied it. And again, I keep saying this every time I'm on, but I really should put more effort into seeking out these shops because they are so boundary pushing in so many ways.
Like you can all like if you want to just like go through the category, it's just like you have multiple friends who have seen many of the short films and will recommend you some of the best ones. And or
Yeah.
it's just like if you want to go beyond like whatever the Academy has deemed okay for human consumption, it's just like there's a lot of avenues to find more animated short films. Like something I like to tell people to do is to just go to the NFB has its own YouTube page, as does Zagreb Film actually, and where they have like just high quality scans of all so many of their animated films. You can just like pick one from like just randomly on their page and then just go through like the recommendations section to just watch more or just like look for any of the thumbnails or titles that seems interesting. And like so many I've just ended up watching just because I thought the title was cool. Like Big Bang to Tuesday Morning thing, or From the Big Bang to Tuesday Morning was one I just watched randomly just because like that's a great title. And I love that one. And so it's just fun.
Hmm. No, it really, really is. And again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to do this. It really brightened up the past few days, especially coming home from work, depressed, being able to sit down and watch these was a great balm, I would
Mhm.
say.
And yeah, it's like I've also had like a long work week behind me as it's like and now I got finally get 2 days off of it's like Guardians of the Galaxy is fucking sucks to work. Uh I work at a movie theater for those of you listening who don't know, but I think all of you do. But it's
Yeah.
just uh but yeah, it was nice to just be like, okay, now I've got a podcast to do and I can watch some good stuff. And it's just like, but even before recording, I decided to go out and like watch a few short films that Zato Gergic had made with Zagreb Film. It's just like just going through, it's just like, wow, these are really good. And it's just fun to watch short films. It's just like they're so easy to watch and get through. Even it can still just provide you with some profound depth to them if you give enough attention to like look deeper. But they can also just be light entertainment if you just want that.
Hmm. Yes, that's certainly true. And I have followed your work or professional life avidly. I remember your stint at Lowe's. I've been I've been in the trenches with you when you had to attend a free screening of Morbius.
Yeah. Uh, that was over a year ago at this point. Wow.
Oh, oh my gosh, along with your colleagues, you've really been down in the muck, I would say, and I admire you for your dedication to being a great movie theater employee.
This summer's gonna be hell. It's just like there's so many big movies.
Oh,
He's it's just
oh,
like in like this weekend is kind of a break because it's just second weekend of Guardians and then like book club 2, and it's just like that's not going to be too big or busy. It's just the most mess is just going to be residuals from Guardians of the Galaxy. But then it's just like next week we have Fast X, the week after is Little Mermaid, and then this summer we have like Mission Impossible, Transformers, Indiana Jones. Oh, it's just so many big movies that are just going to destroy the theaters. There's going to be so much popcorn on every surface. It's going to be awful, but I'm going to get paid for it, so it's okay.
Hmm.
All
Well,
right.
yes.
But yeah, sorry for that
Sorry.
rant. But before we end our show, are there any final thoughts you'd like to share, Zita, or anything you'd like to promote?
No, it's okay. Sorry, I rambled far too much, but thank you for giving me a little window into the hellish conditions at this Arizona theater.
And we have it easy. It's just like my theater is kind of a smaller one. It's just like we only have 12 screens, and then like the other theaters they have like 16, and it's like those get much busier when big movies get out. So it's just we and that's why I like working at that one. It's because it's just like the right amount, or it's just like it it can get slow on the weekdays, and it's just like those are like peaceful times, and it's just like I can just sit there and not think about anything. But yeah.
Hmm.
Well, thank you, Zita, for coming on the show, and thank you, listener, for tuning in. This has been the short podcast about short films. Until next time, goodbye.